Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Weeb Crew. I'm your host.
Wait, hey,
what?
No, this is episode 5.
What do you mean?
We had episode 4 before. We already recorded episode 4. This is episode 5.
No, Mumi, you didn't number the, we did 2 episodes for the 3x3, but you didn't number the second one, so this is 4 technically.
No, we didn't do one after that.
What are you talking about?
Well, I mean, you were kind of busy, so I got Shabes and Hayden, and we just talked about video games.
What are you talking about? This is an anime podcast. Who the fuck Shabes?
You know, Caribou-kun.
What?
Does Anitube digest?
Digesting what?
No, Anitube, like Reader's Digest?
The thing old people read?
Yeah, no, but he does it for, anime videos.
Why would anyone do that? So wait, this was a video game episode?
Yeah.
And but they do a magazine for elderly people on anime videos.
No, wait, what? Hey everyone, welcome to the Awful Appetite Podcast. I'm your host, Mumi VA, and I'm joined here as always with my co-host, Ghost Cuck.
How's it going, fellow anime fans?
And Gilly the Animale.
I'm Japanese.
Yeah, so, my fellow hip anime fans, I don't know about y'all, but I don't watch much anime these days. I read a poorly written, vague synopsis, and I feel like I know what's going to happen in the first few episodes.
Yeah, wait.
Sometimes I go to the store and I'll just look at the light novel titles, and I will literally judge the books by their cover. I literally just hate all of anime. I do a segment on my channel talking about upcoming anime, not because, I want to give these anime any kind of chance, but because I need to put every other anime down except the ones I'm contractually obligated anime that are actually good.
It's why, Isekai, which is, one of, the worst things ever conceptualized since, the fall of the Third Reich.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The show I'm by no means obligated to expressly... What does that mean?
Separate description.
Which is why, Isekai, the worst thing conceptualized in general since the fall of the Third Reich.
Sure.
So really the fall of Constantinople in the 1400s.
Yeah, I completely agree.
It's awful, except for, Mushoku Tensei, which is great.
Very cool.
Very cool. I too started watching Mushoku Tensei on my premium Crunchyroll account. Only $8.33 a month when you buy a 12-month subscription.
It's seriously only $8.33?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, our friends said this is the one that started it all, and you have to watch it. Have to watch it. You can see everything that we just complained about in it, but I suddenly love it now because, reasons.
Very cool.
Yeah. But, I don't really, watch anime anymore, especially, the ones that I complain about.
Sure, yeah.
Allegedly, other people, write the scripts for my videos and do all the editing, and I just, do the VO work and appear on camera for a little bit, and then I collect most of the money. But I remember watching the first episode of Mushoku Tensei, published by Katakawa, and now streaming on Crunchyroll.com. A subscription available for $8.33 a month. It's a pretty good show, like how it handles an insert marketing point here.
You're not supposed to read that part. You're supposed to...
They do something completely different and show you the origin story of how this is an isekai, You literally see him get hit by a truck and then reborn into another world. It's literally never been done before, unless it's Yu Yu Hakusho. It's very cool.
Very cool. Well, sometimes you watch something and you could tell the people responsible at Katakawa's affiliates really put effort into what they're producing. A lot of anime don't put, the effort into create new languages. But Katakawa's Mushoku Tensei, now streaming on Crunchyroll.com for only $8.33.
What a deal.
Invented 2 whole separate fantasy made-up languages. I've literally never seen that in an anime before, published by Katakawa's competitors. It's very cool.
I wish it can go fuck themselves.
Wait, what?
Hello and welcome to Trash Taste Podcast.
Oh, God.
It just never ends. Today we're joined by GilLiesHere of GilLiesHere.
Yep.
Who makes mostly AMVs, but the occasional analysis video as well. And you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, Gil?
Sure. Psy from Psiotic. Ghost from the Grave. Yeah, I mostly produce AMVs. I have 30 of them, but I do have a few video essays, and I'm currently editing one.
Right now? Wow. Can't believe you're doing that on a podcast we're recording. How rude.
Yeah, Sigma grinds it.
I guess it doesn't stop. Yeah.
I too often edit videos while we're talking. It's like cruise control. Not actually pay attention.
I guess if no one could tell by now, by the title or that awful skit, this episode we're going to be talking about Isekai.
I never would have guessed.
I can't believe it. But I guess to get a little bit more into, like, you know, who you are and your social security number and all that stuff, what got you into anime, Gil?
Well, my full name is... I mean, I got into anime through... I mean, besides, like, you know, obviously runs on TV, like, you know, obviously, like, the dubbed ones, like Pokemon, Digimon, and then Bleach on Adult Swim.
Oh, you're a Bleach fan.
I am a Bleach fan. I think around about when I was like 13, 14, my brother got recommended a show, and he started watching it. That show was Full Metal Alchemist 03. And we shared a room at the time, so I inevitably watched it at the same time, because I was kind of forced to, because we were both going to sleep. Yeah, got into anime when I was like 13, 14. Started watching shit, mostly on Netflix, and then branched off from there.
And then you figured out how to torrent stuff?
Yeah, more or less. Well, I actually first found, like, just streaming sites.
Yeah.
Like, before, like, not Kiss Anime first. It was, like, shit like Go Cartoon.
Oh.
The really scuffed.
Yeah, I think I remember getting started on one that sounded very similar to that, so...
Oh, it was awful. And I remember always reading the chat that's just filled with, like, the worst people in the world.
Oh, God. Oh, yeah, they did have, like, those awful live chats.
Yeah, who would go to a chat in a fucking, like, illegal anime streaming site?
And it would constantly, like, ding you, like, ding, ding, ding,
yes.
ding, every time there was a new message, and I was like,
yes,
stop it, please. Maybe we did
like
use the same site.
It's like the fucking manga pirate sites where they all try to, like, thank the manga author on the legal pirate site. As if he's gonna sit there and read the comments.
Oh, yeah. I love all the comment sections on those. Like, when I read through Yasumi Poon Poon, there was a guy with a hollow from Spice and Wolf picture, and he just kept saying, I can't remember. It's like it might as well have been like nice feet or like every chapter or something.
What?
He commented something every chapter, and he eventually vanished at like chapter 70, and people were like, "Where'd he go?"
Oh. People were like concerned, like, we need this.
They're more invested in the storyline of this guy and his fetish for feet than Fun Line.
Yeah. It was like a genuine, like, concern, and then he did come back a few chapters later.
I'm not. It's like a YouTube video. Like, I'm not dead, but we have you here today, you know, against your will, to talk about Isekai. So I guess, why do you like Isekai? What's wrong with you?
Yes, master. I mean, slave, yeah. Speaking of slaves, no,
oh God. Hey, there we go.
I mostly like Isekai because how I view, or how I mostly, like, find interest in, like, anime and broader media is, like, sort of, you know, what appeals to me and what interests to me, which usually is a sort of a subcultural context to the work itself. Mm-hmm. Isekai is an incredibly pronounced genre in that it wears its influences on its sleeves, especially in terms of, like, the reaction to, like, Japanese neoliberalism and things like that. So it's to me, it's like kind of like an inherently interesting genre, even if the specific work doesn't do that much by itself.
It just kind of exists in, like, an interesting space, creatively.
Yeah. And as well as I think Isekai as a genre itself, or as a descriptor for, like, how stories function, I think is really good for in terms of, like, world building, because when you have a story, like, if you have a fantasy story, which I do like, just like fantasy in general, when you have a fantasy story, you have to build the world from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not necessarily a completely not different to. It's not completely different to Isekai, but Isekai start with our world,
and
our modernity, and, you know, all these things. Like, it starts with Japan usually, I say usually because there's a couple of them that aren't Japanese people being reincarnated.
Yeah.
And so they start in like Japan, and then they go to the other world, and you obviously have to build the world up as well. But you have that like the fish out of the water scenario, to essentially thrust you into the new world. And when you're exposition dumped and you're sort of developing the world through characters' dialogues or broader, context clues, right? It feels less ham-fisted because there is also someone always learning about it too.
Right. It's kind of like the almost like a fish out of water thing.
Yeah.
So I guess as the resident layman here, gonna ask all the stupid questions. I guess we should probably define what isekai is for some people. Or Digimon and like now and then here and there, like, are they isekai?
I would say that both of those no.
Oh, okay.
I would say both of those just flat out no. So isekai are narratives about people going to another world. But there are sort of rules and conditions of like what that other world means. Mostly because of the fact that you have the native world. It's always two worlds set up. Although it can be other worlds. Other than that,
It can be like
course.
a multiverse at times.
Yeah, that's like fine, but the setup always has to be two worlds. One where the character is natively from, and then the one where they're going to. And then the transport is really defines like the specific genre, the specific subgenre / tag of it, like Tensei, aka reincarnation, or Shokan, which is like summoning, and then or like Teni, which is like they sort of just move into the other world without a sort of special, like usually through a gate of some sort. Gate, the JSDF anime is Teni.
Yeah.
So the transport is what defines like sort of like the subgenre, but isekai itself is about is transporting someone from one world to another, and that's the main central plot of the story, or the main, at least the premise, right?
Right.
Okay.
The reason why something like Now and Then Here and There or Digimon aren't isekai is in fact two things. So one, you have like the literal definition. Isekai tend to be stories where the characters don't return. Usually not because they're trapped, but rather just learn to live their life differently.
Yeah.
And that's usually because of a motivation around the fact that life in Japan usually sucks for the protagonist. Either because they're an overworked salaryman or a alienated, NEET or hikikomori. So that typically is the way that it functions too. So something like Digimon, where they literally return back to the world. But both of those examples are actually examples of where the worlds are not actually separate. So Now and Then Here and There is actually a time travel story.
Yeah.
There's one world. It is just Earth, but in the far-flung future when the sun is dying.
Kind of like a Dr. Stone.
Yes. Yeah, Dr. Stone's an example of just a time travel. Or Inuyasha.
More
just
recent
going
one
back
that
in
the
time.
Zoomers will know.
Yeah. So time travel doesn't count because it's the same world. They don't go to a different world. They just go to a different time in the world. And if you think about it, like you wouldn't call someone going from Russia to America a isekai, even though it's different. You know what I mean?
Just going to a different place.
Yeah. So that's effectively what those stories are. Digimon is the digital world is inherently connected to the real world, and that's a big thing too. The other world has to be separate. And what I mean by separate, because obviously there's some sort of connection to our world for the story to happen, obviously. But the connection has to be made after the fact of its like formation.
Right.
So essentially the idea is that the other world, is a native world that has its own sort of native formation and its own original sort of development as a world, right?
Yeah.
And then eventually there becomes a connection that becomes a bridge to our world.
So you have something like Spirited Away, for instance, where that's like not a distinct world. It's like a spiritual world that's just sort of coexists alongside ours.
Yeah, so there are other terms for stories that get called isekai a lot by like Anitube.
Yeah.
Spirited Away is what we probably consider an ikai.
Okay.
Ikai is isekai, but without that se syllable. It
Quite
basically
literally, yes.
it means spiritual worlds or spirit, like a other world,
right.
etc. So like Spirited Away, Yu Yu Hakusho, Dragon Ball Z to an extent could be considered ikai, or at least in a literal like descriptive sense of like what is that other thing. It's not a separate world; it's a world that's connected to ours, but through a sort of its own medium, like a spirituality or whatever, right?
Right.
Or some sort of deity, etc.
So the important thing to take away from this is what you're saying is Bleach is not an isekai.
No, not at all. That would also be an ikai, yeah.
Yeah.
Soul Society and, more specific, like the Soul Society is just heaven.
What?
It's just heaven.
Is it? I have no idea. I've never seen Bleach.
Yeah, Soul Society is just heaven.
No fucking way.
But it's a very interesting heaven because it effectively just becomes a feudalism. It's a feudal country with feudalism in place. So it's like you die and then your soul goes to feudalism. It's not very fun.
Well, feudalism was the peak of humanity.
And that's the thing about Bleach is that there's poverty. There's poverty inside heaven.
There's poverty in heaven.
Yeah. Bleach is also funny because there's Soul Society and then Hell. So they didn't really do anything different for Hell. Hell's just Hell.
You briefly mentioned like tags and stuff in relation to like the mode of transfer, reincarnation, summoning, gates, stuff like that. What do you mean by tags exactly?
So I think this is a good time to explain, so there's another reason why something like Digimon, now and then here and there, Spirited Away, etc., are not isekai. The reason why we could also not consider them isekai is because they don't match and they never existed within the space that we've considered like modern, like normal, like modern isekai to come out of, which that space is Shōsetsuka ni Narō, which is a amateur publishing site made I think in like 2005, and it's a free web novel site in which you can publish stories. Closest examples in like America or the West is like Wattpad or like LiveJournal. And so you can write stories on there. And the stories are usually unique stories to themselves. But the authors are typically amateur. So it's typically either their first or maybe second writing experience in general.
Yeah.
They're usually people who either have other jobs or other interests. A lot of salarymen become authors there. As well as they usually read the stuff also on Shōsetsuka. So you have things like tags, which are really important because they effectively display what the intertextuality between the works are. So something like Kadokawa's Mushoku Tensei, now streaming on Crunchyroll.com for only...
No, we're past that part. You don't have to show...
We're past that.
Oh, okay. Sponsored let up, okay.
We don't have to show anymore. We already got paid.
I mean, our friends, But like something like Mushoku Tensei has a connection to Faraway Paladin in the sense that they are both Tensei, so they're both reincarnation stories. They're both stories in which people, the main character is alienated from their life in general, and then they effectively die and then get reincarnated into another world, as a child, a second chance, right? And these influences are on their sleeves, but not because they are like purposeful ripoffs, but it's to build a sort of understanding of like what is this work taking, what is this work adding. Faraway Paladin is also specifically been mentioned by the author to be very influenced by Mushoku Tensei.
Yeah, there was that Twitter thread they put out a few weeks ago or something, responding to a weird ANN review.
Yeah, so ANN published an interview with Faraway Paladin's author, and then like 2 weeks later they wrote a This Week in Anime review, shitting on it and calling it a ripoff of Mushoku Tensei. So the author in English replied to the article basically saying, hey, I don't mind you saying it's a ripoff of Mushoku Tensei. I'm very inspired by it.
Generally, people don't think about how the stuff that they say, the feedback that they give for, whatever, is seen by, people making these kinds of stories.
Yeah, wasn't there like an article recently about how Oda like doesn't watch One Piece tubers?
I haven't seen that.
I remember seeing that something like that. Oda was like, yeah, I don't watch One Piece content on YouTube. Like he's like,
was that in reference to the Totally Not Mark stuff?
No, I believe that was before that.
Okay.
I remember actually
Interesting.
someone mentioned, because totally not Mark, who got destroyed, literally
Destroyed
by Toei.
Yeah.
He mentioned in some, like, I think, I don't know if it was him, but or someone else that got mentioned, but someone mentioned in relation to that of like, oh, Oda watches, like, because Oda has basically said that he like watched almost Anitube, I guess. He said like English or foreign language One Piece videos, and then he decided to stop doing it because they were like, some of them were eerily accurate, and he didn't like that. Like, they were making predictions, and he's like, no, I don't like this. It's too close to what I'm imagining.
So it's just like, you like feel the need to change course. But yeah, you don't really think about like the feedback, quote unquote feedback you're giving as like reaching to the creators. But as we've talked about before, that's also like a big part of writing on Shōsetsu is the constant is the feedback between writers on the site, commenting and berating each other's work.
Yeah, so Shōsetsu no Narō is incredibly like platform dependent like thing. It's there's comments on chapters, on series, on authors' pages. There's ratings, there's views, there's analytics. There's also blogs, like authors can have blogs on there.
It's a lot like YouTube in a way then.
Yeah, so that's actually a really good comparison. YouTube is a creator platform, right, in which people create things and then publish them, but you also have people who never created anything, and all they do is consume.
Yeah.
But they also comment on a creator's work and also give criticism or feedback or whatever, right? And within Shōsetsu no Narō, you'll have content creators, you have authors, right? They are themselves are usually readers of Shōsetsu no Narō. So they start writing stories, and they're influenced by things, and you can see that influence within the tags of the story, because there's tags. Tags effectively become somewhat subgenres, but they're a little different in how we think about them. But tags are really useful for understanding like what a story's lineage is. Because if you go, something that Anitube or Anitwitter does a lot is they approach an isekai or a Narō story, because not all Narō stories are isekai. They'll approach them, and they'll basically decide to just call it generic or a ripoff of something else, or it's just another trash isekai work, right? And they'll fail to realize that like this story is actually within a separate lineage than other like stories. So something like Fire Red Paladin is definitely in the same lineage as Mushoku Tensei, but if you compared Fire Red Paladin to something like Gate, it wouldn't really work out.
Yeah, or By the Grace of the Gods.
Yeah, exactly. So tags are really incredibly useful, and they usually are incredibly descriptive. So that's also it's very useful. Like some tags are just like Dungeon K, which is just like dungeon type.
Self-explanatory. Yeah.
It's like on Pornhub when you're looking, scrolling, and you see generic porn, and you're like, this looks really stupid, and you see it's got the incest tag.
Did it even have an incest tag? Isn't that like illegal on most porn sites?
I think they might have like a step siblings tag.
Yeah, because they have to be step because like incest porn is like technically a gray area of like obscenity.
Yeah, they won't explicitly like put incest there. Maybe on like an edgier site like Xhamster or X Videos, but not Pornhub is too clean for that.
Yeah, too corporate. Yeah, when they literally have to be, considering the credit card's pulled out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's okay to bone the obvious porn actress, but the minute she says, "Oh, fuck me, bro,"
yeah,
you're going to jail.
No, me bro's okay because it's like a nondescript,
Yes, in a lot of ways, Shōsetsu is very similar to Pornhub.
I don't feel comfortable with that.
In terms of we have like a lot of like amateur creators on both platforms.
That's true. That is true.
Self-publishing work.
Yeah, that's true.
No, it reminds. So like, it's funny that you were talking about like, we don't generally think of the authors coming and like seeing what we're talking about. Because I always think of like when Mamare Tono, the author of Log Horizon, went on A.
Oh yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah, did you not know about that?
I know.
No, he just came on on just one random day while the first season was airing, and
It was
just,
like an AMA.
Sort of. I mean, he was just on by himself, and he couldn't really speak a whole lot of English, from what I can remember. And so it's just kind of him just taking some feedback and people kind of asking him some questions and stuff.
Yeah, people that was actually one of like that's like one of A's like kind of feats as a board.
Yeah,
they had him come on. And then shortly after, he got arrested for tax evasion.
Yeah, the Japanese police thought he was too knowledgeable about economics. There's some red flags.
It's funny. The funniest thing about Log Horizon, which is an isekai, is it was aired on NHK.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a little bit of controversy around it airing on NHK, considering he evaded taxes. Because NHK is a government program.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. Wait, what was he? Would he been arrested before or after or during?
It was after. It was either during or after.
Interesting.
I believe.
So where did the most recent season air?
I believe on NHK. Yeah, no, it's still airing on NHK.
Oh, okay. They just still keep it on. Why not?
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Well, they waited long enough.
Yeah, he paid the money back.
But yeah, as far like going back, I guess, to YouTube and content creators. We kind of poked fun at Trash Taste earlier, and their kind of general sentiments on isekai and Mushoku Tensei.
Anitube in general.
Yeah,
and Trash Taste was just the catalyst for that.
Yeah, like that's kind of the general sentiment of the anime community, is just very negative toward isekai. Like you see it with like Neurality's video where she's I'm tired of isekai. And even like me, like I don't watch a whole lot. I've seen a decent amount, I would say, but I don't watch. Generally, when I see an isekai on like a seasonal chart, I usually kind of just gloss over it.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you think that is, like, in the Western community?
So the common approach I think people have with within the Twitter or Anitube is the idea that, like, okay, this thing is isekai anime are saturated, right? They're oversaturated.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And
yeah,
so I think there's a couple reasons for that. One, there has been an uptick in adaptations in the last few years.
Since mostly 2016, 2017.
Mostly through companies like Kadokawa.
Pumping them out.
Yeah. So Trash Taste is their bitch.
Really makes you think, doesn't it? Really gets that noggin jogging.
So corporations have been a little more, more obviously more motivated to adapt them. But you also have the functionality that, like, because they're more popular and they're being more adapted, you have the criticism of oversaturation being kind of misleading. Because if you actually look at the charts of the last few years, because I've watched nearly every isekai anime, there actually isn't that many.
No, there aren't. When people say it's like oversaturation, they mean like maybe 2 or 3 at most come out in a season.
Yeah, it's only a couple really come out of the season, and that's only in the last like 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, and there's still plenty of other stuff to watch.
They've been making this take for a long time now.
Yeah. And
so only really a few come out every season. But you also have the influx of adaptations from things like Narō, like Syosetsu Narō, or Kakuyomu. Kakuyomu is the amateur novel site created by Kadokawa. So you have stories coming from those places, those sources, and they get adapted into a light novel, and then usually a manga adaptation first, and then eventually an anime if they get it right.
Mm-hmm.
And these stories, while not isekai, have obviously a similar lineage to most isekai, right? So
yeah, a similar pipeline.
Yeah, so like there's a few VR MMOK stories which are more similar to SEO. Bofuri.
I can't think of any others.
I'm drawing a blank because I know a few of them, but I don't remember their titles.
Yeah, there was one that came out either this season or recently.
Yeah, there's a few of them. Kuma is also one of them.
Kuma Chameleon.
Well, that one might be an isekai. I know, I haven't seen it. Anyways, but yeah, so there's an influx of adaptations from general like light novels, and things like that have a source from like something like Narō.
Yeah.
So the stories themselves feature a similar like traits, right?
Mhm.
And like I said like earlier, Dungeon K, there's adaptations like that. So you have stories like this that get called isekai because they're similar enough to isekai in the sense of like how the stories are formulated, but they're not isekai.
Yeah, or something like Demon King Academy.
Yes.
Was a recent one that.
Yes. Maosama Gakuen, yeah.
Or fuck, even native isekai like Goblin Slayer.
God damn it. Goblin Slayer is a good example. So a lot of these stories will just be fantasy stories because they're not isekai, right?
Yeah.
They come from it's one world, the characters from that world, and they stay in that world.
Yeah.
But there's just these are usually high fantasy influenced, and then they
JRPG aspects in general.
JRPG, yeah.
In the case of Goblin Slayer, like D&D.
Yeah, there's actually tabletop RPGs are also really influential.
Yeah.
So when you have that in terms of like all these adaptations, like Goblin Slayer. Recent one that people got really bitched about last year was a redo of Healer, Kaifuku, Jutsusi, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love that one.
Oh god.
Yeah, redo of Healer, which is not an isekai.
No, it's not.
It wasn't?
The dude's just from there.
Yeah, he was just from there. Yeah, he was the guy, and he just like kind of like goes back in time.
Damn.
Yeah, so he dies, but instead of dying and just staying dead, he gets transported back to like his younger self.
Yeah.
See, I watched this whole show, but you can tell what I was paying attention to.
Oh yeah. It definitely wasn't just the porn scene.
So like Redo of Healer is not an isekai, but it comes from Shōsetsu Narō. Tsukyo Rui, the author of it, is someone who's also written isekai stories, like the one that aired last season, which is
what was it? Everyone was praising it.
Long title,
hating the man.
I call it Assassin Isekai. It's basically what it is.
Yeah.
So like you have those sort of things, and I think that also really worsens the idea of like there's too many isekai. Oh, they're all just another isekai trash. Because when you consider every Narō story, and to a worse extent, every fantasy story, because remember, someone like Giguk called, Isuzoku Reviewers, he called that an isekai.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God.
So if you call everything an isekai, then the oversaturation problem becomes a lot more blatant, right?
Yeah.
It's more of a problem than it is.
Like, I see it similarly with, like, magical girl shows. Because, like, when you also about isekai, like, one a season is not a negligible amount. When it comes to, like, magical girls specifically, like, you get the people complaining about Madoka clones and, like, the really dark and edgy, grimdark magical girl shows.
Like, Magical Girl Raising Project,
Magical Sight, Beyond the Boundary, or not Beyond the Boundary. Magical Girl, the Twilight Janai, I can't remember the name. But yeah, you only get like one a year, if that. But people still will complain about oversaturation of like dark, edgy magical girl shows, where you still are getting one Precure every year. So really, in reality, you get one edgy show for one normal show, kids magical girl show, and then that's not even including the ones that people generally aren't talking about. You really get a shortage of like Majoko magical girl shows, which is kind of close to like Miyuko Dreamy that came out last year. But people aren't really necessarily talking about those. They're just talking about they want more shows like, Sailor Moon.
Yeah.
But when you look at it, it's kind of less of a problem of oversaturation in that genre. Like, you're not necessarily getting a whole season full of edgy magical girl shows. It's more of just like a lack of an alternative for those people. So like with the Noralities videos specifically, like all of her complaints just kind of seemed like, entry level, I watch anime stuff that's popular problems, like a lot of the stuff she's complaining about is not necessarily an actual issue. It's just more, you're kind of only filtering anime through word of mouth and what's popular in the West. So you perceive that as an issue. Yeah,
so Norality's video on I'm tired of isekai is a great example of why this is a non-issue, essentially. It's a mountain out of a molehill. Because the way she cites her issue, right? Which, by the way, I think the funniest thing about that entire video, which I have seen all of it and I hate it.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Is that she seen like 6 anime She's seen like 6 isekai anime. That's it. And then she's somehow tired of it. Like, all right.
Listen, Gil, you're just built different.
Well, she even seems like she liked ReZero, so it's weird that she's like talking about how she fucking hates all these isekai, but she's like having to force herself to kind of shit talk ReZero for being problematic.
That's the weird thing, is it just comes across as if you're being forced to watch these things.
Yeah, and the
It's just like,
of the
watch
6
something
shows
else.
she talked to, 6 shows she's seen, she only talked about 2 of them, and then neither of them had any connection to each other.
Yeah.
Bookworm and ReZero don't really have connection to each other.
No.
So the video is an incredibly good example of like how much oversaturation is like not a problem, because the way she cites it being a problem is Crunchyroll.
Mm-hmm.
Our sponsor?
For $8.72.
Just keeps changing.
But yeah, she goes through Crunchyroll. So the only shows you can really see is just what Crunchyroll picks up.
Mm-hmm.
And so she looks through it. She sees all these shows. Again, she points out a lot of fantasy shows. A lot of fantasy shows that have basis in like Narō story types. So all these are isekai. It's oversaturated.
Yeah.
So it's a really good example of like how these people who complain about oversaturation talk about it, because one, these people never watch these shows.
They don't.
They're complaining about something that they don't watch, right?
Yeah.
They don't watch these shows.
Yeah, I'm upset by there continuing to be Pokemon. Even though I don't watch Pokemon.
Yeah. Bro, I fucking hate Sasai-san. Why they keep making fucking episodes
What the fuck?
of that bitch?
Yeah, come on.
Since the 60s? Are you... Come on!
I watched a random obscure anime from 2014, and they could be putting all that budget from Sasai-san into making a season 2 of that anime that no one liked back then.
True, though. Yo, where's Spice of Wolf season 3, brother? Cancel Sasai-san.
Fuck this Shin-chan bullshit.
Yeah, so like that's the thing. And then you have the Narō is so bad. I fucking hate that video, bro.
We could have like a whole thing just going through that video. But well, you mentioned like, having seen like only 6, and you've seen most, if not every?
Most. I have not seen every.
Okay. Which kind of just relates back to like mass consumption type stuff, which, what was it? Was it Joe saying that he's read like a few hundred stories on Shōsetsu? Where it's like the people like on Shōsetsu, people just like read a lot of different stories as well. And they all just kind of publish concurrently, so it's not really a saturation issue for them.
So yeah, so one of the things about like how isekai or how general Narō fiction are broadly like sort of formatted, because on the website, right, on Shōsetsuka ni Narō, which is just Shōsetsu, there's actually the stories are actually split in between 2 things. One is Genjutsu Sekai. I think that's the phrasing they use, but I can't remember if it's exactly Genjutsu. But basically, our world or real world, and then the other is another world or a fictional world. So all the isekai is on that side of the spectrum, and then all the non-isekai and all the other worlds, like the more grounded, like
Stuff like I want to eat your pancreas.
Yeah, exactly. Those are on the other side.
Yeah.
You really don't have to look, like if you want isekai or you want fantasy, you just go to fantasy.
Yeah.
And you have tags like high fantasy, low fantasy.
I would presume like sci-fi is also lumped in there as well.
Yeah, SF, yeah. And you have all these tags, and these tags help you to look what you want to read.
Right.
Because if you really like Dungeon Case stories, then you want to read more Dungeon Case stories. Then people who read those stories want more of those stories, so they start writing those stories.
Yeah.
Or in the case of like, so like really interesting example of like how authors like start trying to approach the story, writing on Shōsetsuka ni Narō is the Faraway Paladin author talked about how his friend wanted to start writing amateur stories to get into a competition, because that's a huge part of the platform, is that there's amateur writing competitions in which if you
that's how like a lot of people just get published.
Yeah, if you win, then you'll most likely get published. Your web novel will be turned into a light novel. And if so, besides that, he had a friend who wanted to become a wanted to enter one of these competitions, and then he said, "Hey, I'm going to do it too," right? And he was influenced by tabletop RPGs. Because in tabletop RPGs, you often make campaigns, like in Dungeons and Dragons, right? You make campaigns and you write scenarios. Essentially, you effectively create a narrative within the game you're playing. And so, Far Away Paladin's author, he explicitly stated, like, yeah, there's kind of like this dream, or this kind of like this basic thing of like, yeah, you want to turn that into a story, but it's difficult, but you still want to turn it into a story. And then that's how he sort of approached writing Far Away Paladin. He was also a huge fan of Mushoku Tensei, which I believe is the second highest ranked story on Shōsetsuka ni Narō.
Yeah, after Slime, I believe.
And there's other authors who cited this before. The author of Death March, which is a story that I'm making a video on, Ainana Sensei. I don't think he's explicitly talked about it before, but there is information about how he used to be a game dev, and specifically he used to make tabletop RPGs, and then he started writing a story. And what is the story about? Well, it's a story about a game dev dying of overwork and going to another world, a fantasy world, right? And then it becomes the 7th most popular, highest ranked Syosetsu ni Narō story. That's why everyone's assuming that it's just generic trash in the West.
It's pretty old too. It was coming out around the same time as it's up there with like Mushoku Tensei in terms of age, isn't it?
No, I think it's a little bit younger, I believe. I think it was like 2014, 2015.
Okay.
Started being written in like 2012.
When they do like these competitions for like Syosetsu, they like writing the full, like, it has to be like a self-contained like first volume or whatever. Because I know with Sword Art Online, I know there's an interview that like the first volume is kind of like the whole Aincrad arc, and a lot of the like side story stuff that happens in the anime was all in the second volume. And he supposedly like wrote that. I mean, I'm not super familiar with it, but he supposedly wrote that for like a competition, like the first volume. So is that kind of standard where people will write like a self-contained like first volume, and then like when they get adapted or picked up for syndication or whatever, they will kind of flesh it out more later on, or do they kind of leave it open-ended so they can get picked up, or how's that usually work?
I'm not entirely sure. I believe that is how it broadly works, because like I know the Far Away the Paladin author, he wrote Far Away the Paladin to be in the competition. That's how he started it, writing in the competition.
I know Joe has said that like some competitions will have like, your story needs to fit like these specific criteria or have like these certain elements, and then people will, when submitting to the for a competition, will make edits to their story in order to like be applicable.
It's like when they give you a writing prompt in school and it's like, write about a time that made you happy, and you just write the same shit that you wrote 2 years ago, and you just change some shit around.
Well, it's like, from what I've been told, you have an example of this would be like, because there are like discrepancies between like the web novel on Shōsetsu, and then, changes are made when it gets published into a proper light novel. So like an example of this would be, from what I understand, in Overlord, Albedo is either not a character or not as prominent in the web novel, and then when publishing for the light novel, I guess like editors, publishers, whatever, wanted her to be like more prominent in the story, so that's what happened.
I don't know about that specifically. I'm pretty sure Albedo is in both of them, but I do know there's a distinction between the web novel and the light novel in terms of Albedo has a sister. And the sister is apparently sicko mode, and she's like said to be stronger than Ainz himself.
Interesting.
But I believe she's exclusive to like either one of the stories. I think she might be exclusive to the web novel.
Okay.
I do know it might be in both, or there might be also, again, a publishing decision there. I know Overlord is originally written in a third-person perspective.
Is it kind of to try to match like the fact that a video game might be in third person, like an MMO?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but I remember when Joe told me that, I was like, that's weird.
It's interesting.
Yeah, like such like a small, like a weird change like that would be just a pain to implement.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, when they go into like light novels, I think it's mostly just a sort of thing of just trying to clean up the story.
So one of the things that, because like no one really talks about this when talking about isekai generally, when complaining, you're not going to have people knowing what Shōsetsu even is. And I think I think another reason that like discourse around isekai, and in a lot of ways, just like Shōsetsu light novels in general, on Anitube, is it's very colored by the way people talk about like film on YouTube, in that one, you have people think that it's anime studios writing these stories or choosing to adapt them, which is not the case. And people don't really think about, like, these stories are made by amateur writers.
Yep.
So it's you're not gonna get a tale of two cities. Why would you even expect something like that? But they think and they see like, oh, this is such like a derivative thing, and what they imagine is like a derivative movie, or like just a shameless cash in, something like Jack and Jill, or like insert late Adam Sandler movie here.
Pac-Man's a bad guy?
People think that when they see something like Death March, and they don't really think of the machinations that are actually going on. They just see derivative thing, cash grab, cynically made, therefore bad. They don't really pay attention to any like the actual context. It's all just assumed and taken for granted.
Yeah. So the thing about the isekai, like the pushing it into more as more of an anime genre, right? Because it's been written for a while now, but obviously the adaptations have been slow to get there, right? Mushoku Tensei started publishing in 2012, and now we're getting publishing in 2021. Yeah, I mean anime in 2021. So obviously that's quite a bit of a gap.
It takes a good couple years.
Yeah, these are largely because of committees and production companies, and not the studios themselves.
Right.
And Kadokawa is a huge one, and they are trying to turn these out because they are popular stories. Like, that's the thing about people don't really understand about like why are all these isekai novels getting adapted? Well, because they're popular. People like them.
Yeah, there's a demand there that they're trying to satiate.
The people like them. They're the ones that get adapted into an anime are the ones that get popular. You don't see the ones that don't get any readers on Shōsetsu. They don't get adapted.
You said like Death March is what, number 7 on Shōsetsu? And people would probably just assume it's like this obscure thing that just got picked up for some random reason. And it's like, no, there's a pre-established fan base there.
People just think automatically that because they're, because it's a 12-episode series, isekai, character dies or character gets summoned or something like that, then it's automatically doing the same thing as everything else. And what they don't realize is that, one, it's not ripoffs. They're not copies. They are what in terms of Azuma, like Hiroki Azuma's like model, right?
Yeah.
They're simulacra, right? They're copies nor originals. They're derivatives, but they're in that sense of like they're taking what they've read, they're taking what they've consumed, and they're putting it into a story that they wanted to write. And yeah, it is amateur. They are amateur, and there are, and that's the reason why you have things like sometimes you have more problematic parts of it because it's a little harder to write a story from when you're an amateur, right?
Yeah, especially if you're doing this just as a hobby in your off time.
And things like people always talk about like why is there so many slaves in isekai? Well, it's because they're amateur, right? They're amateur stories.
Yeah,
and it's hard to write a story like a game or like a tabletop RPG
where you have a party.
Yeah, without it's hard to write a story that's like that, but still be not an actual physical game, right? Because you're not making a story about a character that has NPCs. These are real people. It's a native world. It has its own living entity. But you still want to write a character that has a party, that has companions that won't betray them. So you make slaves.
And I guess just to briefly return to Neuralities has only seen 6 isekai.
Yeah, she showed how many she watched in the video. It's like, this is what you're complaining about?
It's like, imagine being like, I've listened to 6 metal albums, and I am here to tell you all metal sounds the same.
I mean, 6 would sound like a very large sample size when you've only seen 50 anime. So, I mean,
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, she probably has seen really small amount of anime.
Yeah. Yeah, what we're trying to say here is if Neuralities, if you're listening, link your Mal, you coward.
Neuralities, if you're listening to this, I don't like you.
I like your voice.
Oh, you fucking simp.
Sip.
Fucking simp.
I don't like your voice.
I kind of like her voice, but God, I wish you would fucking talk about something else.
Talk about anything else.
But no, I feel like it's kind of a shame that people kind of take that mentality, which I get it. You know, people that don't watch a whole lot or like build any kind of for them to kind of draw from. I get why they would see that as, you know, derivativeness as being just inherently bad. If you're just like casually coming home on, you know, the weekend and wanting to watch a new anime and you just see, oh, it's just the same shit I watched, you know, 3 weeks ago. But I feel like a lot of people kind of miss out on that, you know, the more interesting element of that kind of databasing. With Magical Girls, like, I can watch basically any Magical Girl show, and you can kind of see, like, the lineages, and it's like, oh, is this like a Mushoku? Is this one of the, like, similar to, like, a Studio Pierrot Magical Girl show from the 80s, or is this more like a Sailor Moon? And you kind of get that interesting, like, deconstruction going on, where you can kind of see the lineages and kind of compare and contrast how they're kind of taking those elements and what they're doing something different, which from what I've seen of like Isekai, like you could do that with those, just people tend to not choose to.
They just kind of write it off immediately. And it's one of those things where it's like the more you consume, the more you watch, the more you'll pick up on and be able to appreciate.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think there is a reason for this, and I think one of the reasons is because a lot of the foundational like isekai stories didn't get adapted first. What was adapted was what was adapted, right? Because whatever committee or whatever company decided that was more profitable at the time, right? So you don't really have like the same sort of lineage. You don't have the same sort of like understanding of the lineage as you would on Shōsetsuka ni Narō itself. Because, for example, nowadays you have people who the constant claim around Mushoku Tensei is that it invented every trope in isekai.
The granddaddy of isekai.
Granddaddy of isekai.
Which is weird, because then people who say that will then also say like Alice in Wonderland was like the first isekai, and it's like, what?
Either isn't the granddaddy of isekai or it is. So which one is it, bucko?
Yeah, which one is it? Pick one.
There's that assumption, right? And there are truths that Mushoku Tensei is influential. I mean, obviously you see that with the Faraway Paladin. So obviously there's truth in the Mushoku Tensei is influential in terms of like isekai stories, and obviously you have like the Faraway Paladin's author directly citing it as like there's a direct influence for his story. Yeah. But you know, stories like Mushoku Tensei existed before Mushoku Tensei, and Mushoku Tensei's author he was like, yeah, it's blatantly wrong that I invented everything.
Yeah, well, we brought that up in like the in our Mushoku Tensei review, link up in the corner. Well, it's interesting because people who generally don't care about lineages suddenly do when it's Mushoku Tensei, and I think that, you know, that's because that was a big part of the marketing for Mushoku Tensei. Brought to you by Kadokawa, available on Crunchyroll.com.
Yeah, Kadokawa did advertise as a granddaddy.
Yeah, and then you have like, you know, the mouthpieces of Kadokawa, Trash Taste, regurgitating those points in a very, what feels like a very cynical way. We watched like a clip that just felt like a straight up commercial. That like they were just reading off bullet points as to why you should go watch Mushoku Tensei, airing now on Crunchyroll.com.
Yeah, they're generally kind of very lame and vague. And then all of a sudden when they would talk about very specific points, it was always very detailed.
Yeah. It only makes you think.
Every anime, every Anitube video on Mushoku Tensei just regurgitates that take that it's the most influential isekai ever made.
Yeah, well, that's the only thing anyone ever talks about.
Yeah. For example, I think there was a few claims like this. I think Giguk and what's that other cunt?
Joey, Connor,
Scamboli.
Oh God.
They made the claims that Mushoku Tensei invented the truck-kun trope.
That makes no sense.
The vehicles crashing into the main character, them dying, reincarnated.
Yeah.
First of all, you already have works on animation and manga that have this, like Yu Yu Hakusho has it.
Yu Yu Hakusho is the clearest example of that.
But there are other Tensei isekai that have it, that were started writing quite a bit before Mushoku Tensei. Knights and Magic is one of them.
Not with the wrong apostrophe?
With the wrong apostrophe, which is in the Japanese. Well, it's in the Japanese official translation. It's obviously in the Japanese it says naito's endo magic, but you have like the main character dying by being hit by a car. That started writing I think 2 years before Mushoku Tensei started being published or started being written on Shōsetsuka. So you already don't have that claim already doesn't hold water. Mushoku Tensei is influential. And it's also very popular. So it is important to talk about, but
it's not the end-all be-all.
Yeah, there should really be no work that is just considered like the grandfather of Isekai, whatever that means.
Yeah, or just unless it's like the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Yeah, Gilgamesh is my favorite Isekai.
Oh yeah, well no, yeah, just like saying, oh yeah, this invented everything. And then
and then there are Isekai that the authors don't even like consider Isekai or don't like being called Isekai. I know one of them is can't remember what it's called. I think it's like fantasy world building or something. It's like the title is like very descriptive like that. And he specifically called it Hoka no Sekai, which I think would be more accurately translated as like different world. But this is another term that was used as concurrently when like Isekai started being a term.
Yeah.
And Isekai just kind of picked up randomly.
Well, it's like I can remember a time where it's like, Isekai was nowhere even close to like being in the public lexicon as far as like people talking about anime.
Yeah.
So you briefly, brought up a title there. Do you want to address people complaining about light novel titles being too long? This isn't like a specific like isekai thing, but it's like commonly associated with isekai.
Yeah, so I mean there's a general trend with light novels and specifically otaku like publishing where the title should be descriptive, should be functional.
Yeah.
Rather than poetic. And in terms of Shōsetsuka ni Narō, it's because of how the platform influences how stories get picked up and how stories get read and things like that. Tags and titles are really important because if your title describes what the narrative is, then you're more likely to want to read it because that's what you're looking for.
Yeah. It's like a YouTube video. You want to describe what's in the video with the title.
Yeah, it's so funny that like Anitubers are incapable of understanding how this title works, considering they use the same exact title
they're on. Yeah, it's bizarre.
Well, sometimes they do. Sometimes you're like Kenny Lauderdale, and you can't actually put the title of whatever you're making a video on the video, or no one will click on it.
Oh,
Gotta clickbait people somehow.
Yeah, it's effectively clickbait. I mean, like in a roundabout sense.
Yeah. People will criticize light novel titles while ironically having a very long like title for the YouTube video they're critiquing light novel titles in. And the irony there just, again, I think it's because that people just don't know how these stories originate. So the irony just never sets in.
Yeah, because like the Giga video in which he complains about light novel titles is titled very similarly to light novel titles.
Yeah.
And I remember I read comments of people like, "Oh, that's so clever, ha ha ha!" But I don't think he actually did it intentionally.
I don't think it was.
I don't think it was, because it's just titled like a YouTube video. But because of that, it's similar to YouTube titles themselves. I mean, to light novel titles.
Yeah.
And as well as people complain about obviously the length of the title, right? Anime titles should have brevity, like they should be short, they should be concise, etc., etc. Well, the thing about it actually is because one, you have the platform influences of, hey, I need to get this novel to be read, right? I need the story to be read by people, so I need to appropriately title it in a very descriptive sense so people understand what they're getting into and they want to read it. But as well as the fact that like these titles, the really really long ones, right? They always have abbreviations.
Yeah, they do.
So readers and consumers of the stories, either in the original web novel or light novel or manga or anime, they use the abbreviations. The abbreviations are official.
It just comes about, yeah.
Konosuba is an abbreviation.
ReZero is an abbreviation, more or less.
ReZero is yeah, sort of, yeah. Yeah, these are abbreviations. Uchi Musume is an abbreviation of a much longer fucking title about I would kill the demon lord if it was for my daughter, etc. And even like Death March, right? Which in English, I think the most comfortable abbreviation is Death March because the title is long as fuck. But in Japanese, it's actually Desma.
Darth Maul?
We
Desma.
had the convenience of just saying slimy Sekai until I've been killing slimes for 300 years came out, and now it's a little bit more confusing.
Slimy Sekai is called Tensura.
Tensura, yeah.
Which is Ryushin Tensei slime.
But yeah, well, I think it's also like they know what they're doing when they have a long title like that as well. It's certainly all become like a point of parody as well, I'd imagine, where it's just like, okay,
Oh, easily, yeah. There's easily parodies of it.
we're gonna make this like really long and ridiculous. Where it's like they're aware, but there's also a functionality to it as well that just gets totally overlooked most of the time.
Well, it's funny. So I earlier said like, it's more for like functionality rather than like being poetic or anything like that, right? Or
Yeah.
being flowery.
Brevity is the soul of wit and all that.
Yeah,
Shit.
yeah. And but there's titles that creatively use the long titles to be the title, right? I mean, like it's so fucking long. But the really, really long one about like at the end of the world, yeah. 週末何してますか? 忙しいですか? 作ってもらっていいですか? Yeah. What do you do at the end of the world? Are you busy? Will you save us?
There's one from the author of Kino no Tabi, which is this is clearly taking the piss, and I'm not going to read the Japanese title.
Oh, I know the one you're talking about. Yeah.
I'm a high school boy and a successful light novel author, but I'm being strangled by a female classmate who is a voice actress and is younger than me. It's like, okay, clearly a joke.
Yeah.
Not everything needs to be Bakemonogatari. It needs to be like a clever pun or something.
It's funny because these abbreviations have existed for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, think about Digimon, Pokemon. They're abbreviations, right?
Yeah.
Japanese loves abbreviating things, regardless if it's English or Japanese itself. Like they love abbreviating things for branding.
A lot of like loan words just get abbreviated
To like an unrecognizable degree sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they love abbreviating shit. So the very descriptive title there's no problem with it because there's also a shorter title.
Well, I've actually heard part of it is like marketing. It's like a cold sell. Like you have a short amount of time to like sell yourself, or sell the product you're selling. Sometimes that's yourself, but you have like a short amount of time, so you're trying to get that out there as quickly as possible, as concisely as possible. So if someone's just looking for a light novel, they see the title and it kind of gives you a brief idea of what's in the light novel in the title, and so you kind of make a selection based on that.
And it's funny because Joe made a few short sketches on his second channel about light novel titles.
Oh yeah, he did. Yeah, that was like right after that Gigak video.
Yeah, really response to the shitty Gigak video. Yeah. And one of the videos he talks about, he's like he plays a character reading a book, and the other character is like, "Hey, what are you reading?" And he's like, then he reads out the title, like some race car spider or some shit like that. Came up with, and then the character's like, "Oh, what's it about?" And then he just reads out the title again.
Yeah,
the functionality of the synopsis, the title basically as a synopsis, makes a lot of sense, especially when you're in a sort of cutthroat environment like amateur writing is.
Yeah, again,
you have to
like
compete with like everyone else. Like,
I know what the video is going to be about based on the title. I know what the story's about based on the title.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot of like about isekai in the general kind of context and like the idea and concept of isekai, but I mean we've seen some isekai, and obviously Gil, you've seen quite a bit. So what would you say are some of your favorite like shows or like series?
Well, Mushoku Tensei is definitely up there in terms of especially the production of the anime itself.
Yeah, sure. How every blade of grass was animated.
Yeah, every blade of grass was animated. Yeah, exactly. Mushoku Tensei is definitely up there. I probably wouldn't consider my favorite though. Tsukimichi from last year was also really, really good. I really like Overlord. Death March has a special place in my heart, but I wouldn't consider like a favorite really.
Yeah,
because it's mostly just interesting. But as a show, as a isekai story, it's kind of okay. Gate is an amazing time if you want to watch JSDF
Oh
propaganda.
hell yeah, yeah. Was Gate from Shōsetsu?
Originally Arcadia. Which is
Okay.
different. Actually older
Yeah.
than Shōsetsu.
So it was Overlord, wasn't it?
Yes, Arcadia. Yeah, the Overlord's also from Arcadia, and then Arcadia. Yeah, then Shōsetsu. Overlord left Arcadia to Shōsetsu, then got went to a light novel, or like it went to Shōsetsu after it became a light novel, or something like that. Yeah, fun fact about Gate. By the way, the author came back from the Iraq War in 2004, and then started writing Gate on Arcadia.
Oh, that's interesting.
About how the JSDF is the best soldiers in the world.
I was like contrasting that with like the opening scene of Pat Labor 2 in my head.
Yeah. Oh, man, the gay author is fucking hilarious. Can you in the video?
Like
can you put up images of the gay author?
Oh yeah, where he's like with like the JSDF at a book signing.
Oh, it's so funny. There's so many of them. There's also funny like stories about like how the mangaka author of the manga adaptation of Gate, he fucking hates the author.
Really?
Yeah, he hates the author because he's an asshole. But he likes the story, he likes making art for the story. The art is lit.
It's almost like the polar opposite of like Yojo Senki, where people got upset after finding out that the author was a communist or something.
Yeah, no, the author of Yojo Senki is the polar opposite of the author of Gate. Yojo Senki's author is like not nationalistic at all.
Yeah. Mumi, what are some of your favorite? Because you were like telling me while you're taking a bit of a break that you've seen more isekai than you initially thought. So what are some of your favorites?
Some of my, I mean, I guess technically my favorite, I guess it's Mushoku Tensei. I don't know how much that value that really has coming from me, but
yeah.
I mean, well, I take that back. Is the 12 Kingdoms, is that isekai? Or is that non-isekai anymore?
Well, that's another thing where it's just like, it is, but it isn't.
Well, yeah, I think 12 Kingdoms. Well, I think so. There are stories that like are also influential. Like SEO is influential to isekai.
Yeah,
but stories like Sakaima, that's also like a really influential story. There's of like Shōsetsu authors and things like that. Because then that's our like, the manga started in like the early 2000s, and then like the anime also started in like the 2000s, which I just want to watch it still. So you have stories like that like aren't really isekai themselves, but they Sakaima you probably could consider an isekai. It might be like a little bit of a stretch, but it's like loosely connected. Something like Three Kingdoms, it's kind of where we get into the problem with how to define a genre versus defining a word.
Right.
And also defining a lineage too, right? Because something like, Knights in Magic and Mushoku Tensei are both from Shōsetsuka di Narō. They're both Tensei. They're both created within similar spaces.
Yeah,
sure.
But something like Three Kingdoms isn't at all, right?
12 Kingdoms.
12 Kingdoms, sorry. Not
Three Kingdoms. That's Avatar.
The Romance of the 12 Kingdoms.
Romance of the 12 Kingdoms.
Yeah. So the 12 Kingdoms isn't in that space. So lineage-wise, it's kind of a little more distant.
Well, it's like the difference between something like Friday the 13th and Psycho. Sure, Psycho's about a guy with a knife going around killing people, but it's not really a slasher. It's not really part of the same creative space as something like Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street or Halloween.
Yeah, like Halloween and Texas Chainsaw Massacre are a lot closer to each other than Psycho is, or Nosferatu.
Nosferatu.
some shit. Broader horror shit, right?
Yeah.
And then that's the thing too, right? Is you have the word, because a lot of people, and that's where I sort of had to define it earlier. There becomes a problem when you start using the word as just literally, right? Just isekai, another world. Yeah, because you could say that about really anything, right? I mean, it really becomes a thing of like, what is it about, right? Isekai, and I think this is how I think it's useful to describe it. Isekai isn't about another world; it's about going to another world. It's about the transfer from one world to another. Right. And that's the basis of isekai itself. So it's like, you can have another world, but does it really care about the transfer? and that's where you get it. So like that's the thing about like and that's the thing about isekai, right? Because you have all these the different transfers, and like the different way that they're transferred, and these different subgenres and tags, they really do influence how we can really think about the stories. Because like, you know, I really don't think like you know, Arifureta is the same exact story as, you know, Death March. And then, like, you know, something like that. So, but you have, like Kumo Desuka Nanika is more similar to Arifureta than something like Gate is, right? But they're both isekai. But they don't really have that much relevancy towards each other.
Even within, like, you know, stuff being published on Shōsetsu and Arcadia, there's still a pretty wide variety of things that it wouldn't make sense to compare everything coming out there, that even within the genre of isekai, just because of that.
Yeah, I mean, it then becomes just a thing of just like, it's just not a useful term to describe everything.
Well, again, it comes back to the issue of just say fantasy.
Yeah, just say fantasy. Yeah, I mean, what is calling Ishizoku reviewers isekai do? Nothing. It's not isekai. There's literally no other world. They're just from that world.
They do make a joke in like the last episode about people being like reincarnated into their world, but that's just like a one-off joke that they make. But none of the characters are from another world, as far as we know, anyway.
That's another thing too, right? You can have stories that reference isekai, and you can have stories that have technically another world, but they're not like trying to do that thing. You know what I mean? They're not trying to do the same thing. Using it as a literal descriptor is just kind of useless.
What's like the one chart of like chaotic, lawful, like isekai like that, where it has like Fresh Prince in the bottom right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, okay, I mean, like, okay, you want to call Fullmetal Alchemist Conqueror Shambhala an isekai, then just call everything an isekai.
Yeah.
What does the word mean anymore, you know?
I think it's funny that you have like almost the complete opposite problem when you get into like magical girl shit.
Oh god.
Because like, you know, at isekai, we're the problem is structuring, you know, a more rigid, like how you would define the word. Whereas in Magical Girls, it's like, oh yeah, Devilman Crybaby's an isekai, or a Magical Girls show.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess bringing it back to the question, Mushoku Tensei would be like my favorite, I guess. And that's the one that I guess is the most, that I have most like appreciation for, and like
you're paid
can
to
talk about. Oh yeah. No, I mean, no, I'm
Wait.
absolutely not. And then Yuzo Senki, I guess, would be like second, just as like the more trashy, I guess you want to call it that, where you're just enjoying it because it's fun. And you're not necessarily like trying to appreciate anything on a deeper level. And I don't know, I guess Log Horizon.
Yuzo Senki is one of those stories that are just like so. It's one of the most anti-capitalist isekai, because the isekai are generally kind of against capitalism, or at least like the very least they're critical of capitalism and modernity.
But you also have like those like imperialist soft power aspects as well.
Yeah, that's the big thing too. Yeah, so even if they are against like sort of like the modern conditioning, they'll still have like soft power. Like they'll still have the influence of like, you know, cool Japan.
Yeah, like Mumi, you recently finished season 2 of Bookworm, which is a lot like that, where it's just like, I'm a Japanese woman here to clean up the place.
Yeah, to a detriment to the story, I think. In that one, I didn't like how much of like an encyclopedia mine is in Bookworm. Like to a degree, it's fine, but once you start getting into like the logistics of how she's able to do all of this, like she has an expertise in like so many different things. She's able to capably
manage an orphanage out of poverty.
Bro, that's just because she reads a lot of books, bro.
Yeah, she's just an average Japanese citizen. They could all do this.
Yeah, of course. Well, that's the thing. It's like, it's very clearly like, you know, I don't like the term power fantasy, but there is clearly like an element to that there.
Yeah.
But everyone loves Bookworm, and everyone hates something like Death March or Smartphone for being quote-unquote power fantasies, or, you know, Arifureta.
Yeah, this is one of the funniest things about Norali's video on Isekai, because she critiques ReZero for being a power fantasy, or wish fulfillment, which I think is hilarious because if anyone's ever actually fucking seen ReZero, you know that man has gone through several layers of hell. So
Yeah.
I don't want to be Subaru. Subaru's life fucking sucks.
It's like, sure, he gets to come back. It still hurts.
Yeah. Yeah, just because he's surrounded by hot girls doesn't make it a fucking wish for the film. Like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Like, what if you were surrounded by big titties, but you were tortured every second of your life?
Isn't the premise for like the slave thing coming out soon? You know what I'm talking about?
Save Isekai?
No, it's not. No, maybe. All I know is like a dude is like a slave to hot anime girls.
No, I didn't hear about that. That sounds interesting.
We'll talk about it
I
afterwards.
mean,
Okay.
if we're being honest, a lot of anime fans would probably
Oh, absolutely, brother.
step on me, mommy.
Hell yeah. But yeah, again, it's just kind of like weird double standards when it comes to something like, and I like Bookworm, but it is just kind of like, what are you talking about?
I don't know. When you watch read Bookworm, it's just like, she's so fucking condescending. I fucking hate mine, bro. She's so fucking annoying.
I don't even know if I'd call her condescending, but she's got like, they try to give her that element of, I guess, like antisocial, I guess you want to call it like autism or something, where she's not necessarily aware of how she's coming off in like a social cue, where like there was a moment I remember where she like went up to the blonde haired kid, I don't even remember his name, and she's like, you're gonna do what I say and you're not gonna have any questions. And it's just like, oh, that kind of character interaction like really irks me when you have characters doing that kind of shit.
Oh, as we mentioned, because we're talking about stories I like. This is not Isekai, but we talked about it earlier. The Misfit of Demon King Academy.
Oh, yeah.
That's fucking rocks. Like, please just watch the first fucking episode. It is fucking baller.
Where he kills the guy. I couldn't tell if that was supposed to be a joke or not. It's presented in such...
It's so fucking good, dude.
he keeps killing the guy and bringing him back. And I'm just like, what the fuck am I watching?
He beats the guy, and the guy's like, no, I'm gonna keep, because like, the premise of Mr. Demon King Academy is that the Demon King dies, but is going to be reincarnated. But like 2,000 years, right? And then in the 2,000 years, there's like peace in the country of demons.
Yeah.
And they make they make an academy for people who are like likely to be the reincarnation of the Demon King, right?
Yeah.
And there's like there's also like a sort of like a class-based society, based off of like pure-blooded like royalty or like noble-blooded demons, half-bloods, that sort of thing. There's like
like Harry Potter.
There's sort of elitism there, and then but you have but everyone's there is like a potentiality to be the demon, to be the reincarnated demon lord. Turns out the demon lord actually just became reincarnated as a random fucking like working class family's kid.
Yeah.
And then he grows to a full to a 17-year-old's body in like a month, which is hilarious.
The Dunwich Horror, of course.
Which is fucking hilarious. And then he goes to the Demon King Academy, and he's just a Demon King.
Yeah.
There's no like typical Tensei
ambiguity
thing
or wondering.
The
school is now totally obsolete. I did see it's like something from like a later episode, I think, where he just throws a castle at someone.
But he does. Or he picks up a castle. That first
episode is bonkers because you have like the shitty rival character set up.
Yes.
Like outside the school where he's like bullying the
Gary from fucking Pokemon, like motherfucker at the school being like, smell you later.
And then not even a minute later, the Demon King walks into the school, and it's an immediate like tournament thing where he then has to fight his rival immediately. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
I feel like we skipped a few steps.
So when he enters the school, it becomes a test thing. Because like it's testing your aptitude to become the demon lord or whatever.
Yeah.
And then it's like a knowledge-based thing, which is actually reason why he gets like the demon lord, the literal demon lord, doesn't get perfect marks because there's actually ends up being a conspiracy to change the history of the demon lord. So when he says the demon lord's true name, which is his name, it tells him that's wrong. Because there was
gaslight. That'd be interesting. Just gaslights in the whole show.
The whole society is like, the whole society is gaslit to believe that he's not the demon lord, essentially.
Yeah.
Like, not to understand who truly... It's like a fabrication of history. So yeah, there's a test. There's like these tests when he enters the school, and then there's like a tournament to like determine like battle strength or whatever. And yeah, of course it's the fucking rival of the gate of the school who like got pissed at him. And he's like, I'm not gonna lose this time because I have an anti-magic armor or whatever. And he's like, all right, cool, let's go. And then he fights him, and then he kills him, or he gets into like an inch of his life, right? And then he's like, I will never give up. And he's like, okay. And he kills him, then reincarnates him. Not reincarnates, resurrects him.
Just resurrects him effectively.
Immediately, like in 12 seconds, like resurrect, boom, he's back to normal. He's fucking terrified. And then he's like, I'm still not gonna give him. He's like, all right, let's make a bet then. And then he just keeps killing him, and then keeps resurrecting him. He like kills him, resurrects him like 50 times.
Of people watching in horror.
A full stadium of demons who are effectively just the people of the country, right? They're just people, right? So it's like a full stadium of people, and she's just killing and resurrecting the same fucking person, and which like the resurrection magic is like not known because it's a demon lord's like magic.
Yeah.
So they're like, how the
We've
fuck
gotten
is
off
this
onto like
happening?
a weird tangent.
Yeah, I love
here?
it.
How do we get to talking about this? Movie's just sitting there confused.
I fucking love that show. Please watch the first episode because it's all you need to know.
Is this like a comedy?
No. It's just it is a Sigma story.
It's moisturized, unbothered, in his lane.
In his lane.
I guess bringing it back to like Bookworm and shit.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that's what we were.
Oh my fucking god! Wait! 1 sec. On Wikipedia page, it says the manga adaptation by Kaya Haruka. I think that's supposed to be like two different names, but they. Yeah, whatever. Was serialized online from July 2018 to July 2021. When it ended due to the author's death from pancreatic cancer. Oh, damn.
Oh,
damn.
I did not expect that to see that.
That's depressing.
Fucking hell.
Oh. Oh, then.
Yeah.
The Bookworm.
I've only seen 4 episodes of Bookworm, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, I found her fucking
I've actually seen it twice.
The full thing?
I've only seen it once.
Yeah. So.
Like every season? Twice?
Yeah, I've seen both seasons twice.
Huh.
But no, like I guess like kind of more in line with just the double standard. I guess like I guess I can kind of see it. Like you get people who, are very into, overpowered otome isekai.
Yeah.
Yeah, but because like I kind of get it to a degree, because like, like the Gar kind of manly anime shit doesn't necessarily do a whole lot for me a lot of the time. But
sure, yeah.
you get like Noriko and Gunbuster, or fucking Hibiki and Symphogear doing some guttural yells, and ripping off clothes and shit. I'm all for that shit. But you do it with a guy, I was like, eh.
Interesting. Perhaps it speaks to your feminine side.
You mean my good side?
Sure.
Yeah.
Does my good side look cute?
You don't like ReZero. Gil, you recently finished rewatching the first season and then watching all the second season, right?
Yeah, catching up where the anime is, yeah. I really like ReZero.
It's been years since I've seen it, but I have good memories of it. Mumi doesn't.
I didn't like it. No, I didn't like it.
What about the other big isekai from like 2016, Konosuba?
I didn't like that one either.
Is your name Jerry Freeman? No.
That's a joke we're only gonna get.
Yeah. Maybe someone will get it. But I like Konosuba. It's fun.
Yeah.
Although I haven't seen anything they recently did.
Like, not have you seen like season 2 or just not the movie?
I've seen season 2, and I've seen like I think 2 of the OVAs or specials that were released. And then I didn't watch the movie, which people claim is problematic, which I think is funny.
Oh, Oh yeah,
And
well
then-
there's that, but that's a whole other
that's
thing.
a can of worms. Yeah, can of bookworms.
Can of bookworms.
Yeah,
Just imagine like mine and like being like canned. It's like forced into a
You
can.
fucking worm.
No, I don't want to be a sandwich.
no, I've found like generally what my preferences are for isekai, I guess, is like when they kind of touch on, like their previous lives and kind of how the isekai process has like forced them to kind of reconcile parts of their old selves with like this new world.
So the last
And getting,
15
like, that
minutes
kind
of season 2 of Bookworm.
Right, yeah, like that. Like when I watch a lot of isekai, like I'm not really into necessarily like the fantasy elements. I'm not really into fantasy in general a whole lot.
Mhm.
You
But
like
when they
magical girl
kinda-
shows. What are you talking about?
I'm talking like high fantasy and shit.
Yeah,
like,
I know.
Those wouldn't be high fantasy. Yeah.
when they kind of are getting into those elements and they can be okay. I don't necessarily hate it, but it doesn't interest me so much as like when it's kind of using it as a commentary, like in Mushoku Tensei, where all of those elements are kind of more building up him as a character and like healing him and like his trauma from his past life. Like that kind of stuff really interests me more so than just like, the presentation of going into another world and just having this fish out of water experience where you're just learning about the world itself. Like generally the world itself, I could give less of a fuck about.
Okay. I like isekai when I'm paid to.
Yeah.
Oh, that too.
Crunchyroll.com.
Crunchyroll.com.
$8.69.
Get it with a $19 Fortnite card.
It's interesting you say that, right? Because why do you like ReZero then? Go consider ReZero one of the. I said, why don't you like ReZero then?
Oh, why don't I
could say ReZero is one of the best isekai, at least in terms of ones that have been adapted.
A
quite
lot of
bit.
this is in season 2, predominantly,
Yeah.
from what I've been told.
Have you not watched season 2?
I didn't watch season 2. I dropped after season 1, essentially.
Season 2 might color your perspective on ReZero a little bit differently.
I'll have to check it out, maybe.
Because what you're talking about is a huge part of what makes ReZero season 2.
I think for me in the season 1, like Subaru just didn't work as a character for me.
Mhm.
Like they spend this time kind of presenting him in like a, almost like a Rudy sort of way where he's like this kind of asshole piece of shit kind of character, self-entitled kind of thing. And it never really meshed or like brought to the level of like believability for me. Like you just kind of, he came off less as like what they're trying to present for him as, him putting forward this face of, happy-go-lucky, I'm making jokes, cutting up kind of shit, but really he's like covering up all the, like, it felt less like that and more just kind of bipolar in a way for me. For me, like when the main character didn't work, like the whole show didn't necessarily work for me.
Yeah, so I mean, like, yeah,
It's one of those deals where I get where the show is like coming from and what it's trying to do.
Yeah,
We'll probably have to watch ReZero season 2 when season 3 comes out, and we'll have to do it in the club room video on that.
Oh God.
Look out for that in 4 years.
I hope it's 4 fucking years. Yeah, there's way too much of a gap between season 1 and 2.
Oh God, yeah. I've just totally forgotten everything that happens.
That's why,
in
that's
season
why I
1.
rewatched. That's why I rewatched season 1. Which I liked season 1 a lot more than I did in the years after watching season 1, because I liked it quite a bit when I was watching it. But there was these parts where like there was like these episodes which were like weeks because I was watching it airing, where it just felt like nothing really happened in that episode specifically, and then so like it just felt like there wasn't really anything going on in that episode.
The reset
specifically.
mechanic kind of is like a detriment as well, because it's just like, oh, nothing really happened in this episode then.
And then here's the reset from the beginning. I liked it a lot more though in terms of the structure from binging it, because you can see how the structure is laid out a little bit clearer, and then when it's over 24 weeks.
In terms of like the structure, people made constant like references to like Dark Souls when it was airing,
Yeah,
and which is amusing. But there's like this thing where it's like in the first arc, for example, you have like the street thugs who at first are an obstacle, and then by the end of that arc, he's just like running past them.
No, I
Like-
think
Like you run past enemies in Dark Souls because you've already fought them.
yeah. I've never read any interviews with the author of ReZero, but ReZero is incredibly based off of game mechanics. A little more than most isekai. Because of the reset, because the return by death is a direct literal depiction of
It's save scumming, but still inconvenient.
save scumming, yeah. And
But you don't choose when you save.
Yeah, he has checkpoints. And he does the parts of the story as effectively levels or like routes in a visual novel, making sure he says the right things, etc., etc. He does the right actions to get the good end, right? The good ending, which he obviously goes through mostly bad endings. So yeah, I like ReZero is incredibly entrenched in the game logic of the world, and I think like there is a part I can kind of understand where you're coming from, Mumi, because I think in the first season there's a little bit less of a focus on like, okay, why does Subaru actually like, why is he like this? There's also a focus of like, actually, how did he really become like this? Because it's much more focused on the sort of the experience itself, right? Him dying and then him coming back and then him doing this again and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it's not like in, Mushoku Tensei where it's kind of the presentation is integral to his past, like his past life is integral to the presentation of like what he's doing. Like he has like offhand comments, I remember, where he's like talking about, I was neat for X amount of years. I worked out in my room and that's why I'm able to do these things. Like he's got like comments like that, but it doesn't really go into like his past life in any kind of like real detail.
You don't get as much insight in season 1 as you do in season 1 of Mushoku Tensei.
Because season 2 of ReZero focuses a lot more on his past.
Yeah.
And specifically how he sort of deals with why he became a shut-in. Because he's a high schooler, right? He's 18. And he shuts himself off primarily due to like hereditary pressures.
Okay.
Because he was successful when he was a child, mainly at sprinting, and then he constantly was pressured by the pressure of becoming better, but as well as the pressure of like, you're just like his son, right? You're definitely his son. And his father is like a sort of like great man, you know what I mean? Like he's sort of a figure that people look up to. Yeah. In terms of his personality, in terms of sort of moral standing, et cetera, et cetera. So he's constantly pressured to be like him. And he effectively rejects it, sort of pulls out. He doesn't really know how to sort of come back because his parents are incredibly accepting. Incredibly loving parents, but they aren't necessarily that harsh on him. And he feels like he needs that harshness in his life. He needs that harshness. He needs to basically say, no, you're doing it wrong.
Sure.
And I think in a lot of sense that's kind of where the metaphor of return by death kind of comes into play, because obviously he's an otaku, he's a NEET, and et cetera, and he knows video games and all these things, right? And there's even the bit in the beginning of the story why he's able to find Beatrice. Beatrice? Beatrice? Is that her name?
The Beatrice, yeah.
The lolly in the library lolly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reason why he's able to find her door every time is just because he's good at like pattern seeking, like in video games.
Okay.
There's joking that in the first couple episodes. So there obviously is like there's those reasonings of why like you would have something like a very specific game logic, right? Because game logic usually just kind of goes into the idea of like, here's a sort of RPG-like world, right? Demon lords, dragons, magic, and then you have things like UIs, which is one of the reasons why I think everyone calls every isekai just SAO clones.
Yeah. Something like Shield Hero.
Yeah. And so and then you have different works like Shield Hero, for example, is a very game logic story, right? But ReZero is almost like, here's a little game function, and then in this way it behaves like a game. But I think the sort of emotional, at least, representation of why there's Return by Death is sort of crucial to Subaru as a person, as a character, is because of the fact that he effectively needs to learn how to get over something or get over the obstacles in his life through trial and error.
So essentially he was only good at running away, and he has to learn to not run.
Yeah, he has to learn to not run away, yeah.
I feel like I've seen that done before somewhere. I just don't know where.
It does make me wonder, like, how, like, if you can make an isekai, or like how you would make it work as like a video game story. Because like Bookworm, one of the interesting parts about Bookworm for me was, it's about somebody who reads a lot of books, and it is a book. Like, obviously it doesn't come across in the anime adaptation, but when you would be reading it, it is a book about someone who escapes into books. It is a book about her escaping into a new world. That is just a book that's you escaping into that world in a way. Like almost like a Haruhi situation where the presentation of it being a book is kind of important to some of the things that it's doing and playing with. So I wonder how that would work if you tried to make like an isekai video game.
I don't know about specifically isekai games, like as in like sort of just like original isekai games, but there are games based off isekai series, and they actually do have a kind of an interesting logic to them that happens. Joe co-wrote a paper about it.
Oh,
which is publicly available.
Was it like actually like published, or was this like what?
Yes.
Okay, we'll put a link up there in the corner then.
So yeah, there is like sort of distinct logic about like games based off of isekai stories, but the general idea is that they're not literal games themselves, and that's kind of why you have so many like stories like Overlord or Isekai Mao or Mal-sama Retry and like things like that, where the world itself is incredibly similar to a game that they've either played or designed. Death March is also one of them. Like the world itself is very similar in terms of the functions, and sometimes even the narrative of it. But they're not quite the same. So there's often a sort of off-kilter sense to the world itself, and you'll often remark, like especially in those three examples, for example, there will be like this world isn't exactly like the game. And I think it's mostly due to like the relation of simulacra, because they aren't the game themselves. They're not copies of the game. It's not a stuck inside of a game world like SAO is. They are separate individual worlds that have their own native functionalities, but they have functions that are similar to games that they've played in Japan. They become simulacra. So that's why you have like Isekai Mao, where the main character was like the highest level player in the MMORPG, and then when he gets reincarnated into, or not reincarnated, just summoned into the other world, he is just super strong.
Even something like Log Horizon as well.
Yeah, Log Horizon's an incredibly interesting one because
it is just the game.
Log Horizon's world, is just the game, but the reason why it's not like SAO is because the game becomes a world.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah,
a separate.
There's no native population to Aincrad.
Yeah, well, so Aincrad,
it becomes a little bit more fuzzier later on with the Alicization arcs.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's no. Yeah, well, there are parts of SEO that I think are isekai. I think Joe wants to make a video on Alicization.
It gets kind of messy because it's a sprawling story that was written over many years.
Yeah, that's kind of that's can of worms. But with Log Horizon or I think a really interesting one for me is stories where because you have like Log Horizon or Mal-sama Retry where the game literally becomes a world, and then they have like you either have high level players or you have like Mal-sama Retry's circumstance. It's actually the developer of the game, the creator of the game, becomes one of two of his characters. And he has to roleplay as the characters, which is really, really fun.
Okay.
Because you have like his main character, which is Kunai, which is like a demon lord.
Yeah.
But he's also like a Yakuza kind of character. So he has to like pretend to be like a Yakuza like demon lord character.
Okay.
And then his other character is like this like super neketsu, like hot-blooded, like Naruto kind of hero, you know? Like, yeah, yosh! You know, we're gonna get them and stuff like that. So he has to roleplay as that as well when he becomes that character too.
They talk about it a little bit, Joe and Damien?
Yeah, Frenchman.
They talk about that a little bit in, I want to say either like the first or second Thousand Isekai video, where it's like the sort of performativity that you get in a lot of Isekai, like Overlord.
Yeah, the first one is about performativity and like communication. Because the communication becomes really flawed because of the fact that most isekai characters kind of keep the fact that they're isekai characters to themselves.
Yeah.
So like so you kind of have that, and like with Overlord's really interesting because he like Mao Sama Retry has to sort of, and also Isekai Mao, he has to role play as the isekai as a character, right? Which is originally Momonga, but like it's Ainz al Ghul, right? So he has to sort of role play as this monster, essentially, this Lich King.
Yeah.
But there's also affects of the body that transform his like consciousness to fit it better. Like he suddenly becomes very desensitized to human death, which sounds really edgy, but he's more like, this doesn't bother me. This would have bothered me before. Like, why doesn't this bother me anymore?
Yeah.
As well as like he has an anti-horny spell. Anytime he gets horny, his like spell activates and he gets like mellow.
Hell yeah, Sigma.
And it's all to like sort of keep this air of like the overlord, right? This powerful lord, right? Because he's just Japanese salaryman. You know? Yeah, he's a normal dude. You know, and so he's not this overlord, right? And so there's a lot of dialogue around that. It's pretty interesting within the isekai. You also have the fact of like, you know, these characters fundamentally kind of have to hide the fact that they're from other worlds because of the fact that they could just be subjugated, right? They're subject to some sort of discrimination or some sort of unfair treatment in a lot of isekai, yeah. Because with Shokan, right? Shokan summoning, there often is a church or some sort of entity that decides to summon the hero, right?
Right. Yeah, something like Shield Hero.
Shield Hero, yeah. So Shield Hero summons 4 heroes. Something like Genjutsu Yusha, which is Realist Hero. It's pretty interesting because the kingdom summons a hero because the kingdom itself has a ritual that can summon heroes. But the kingdom itself doesn't actually want the hero. They want to sell the hero off to make good on their debt. And then the hero, who's your typical Japanese university student. I think he might literally be an economics student. He's like, don't worry, bro, I can handle your debts. And he just takes over the kingdom. Literally, the king of the world, the king of the kingdom, literally makes him the king.
There's something airing this season about a dude trying to like sell out his kingdom, but he ends up just like accidentally improving it.
Yeah, that thing.
Ooh, really? This season?
The Genius Prince's Guide to Raising a Nation Out of Debt.
Oh yeah, yeah. I haven't.
I know nothing about it beyond that. Beyond the premise.
So Fate Zero is a isekai.
I don't know.
No,
I've not seen Fate Zero.
I mean, they're coming from parallel universes, I guess, but
are they?
Are they?
Well, yeah, because you get like so like in Fate, sometimes they can change based on their lore.
Okay, we're gonna stop right here.